last major topic, we can store text information as well as numbers. And for historical reasons, with the way MATLAB developed, there are two different ways of doing it. You can either treat it as a character array or as a string. And then you can have an array of strings. So what's the difference? The difference is if you have an array of characters, you can index each character. Okay, so you can think of it as each character being stored separately. If you store it as a string, it's indivisible. You can't access the individual letters. So what should you use? Well, if all you want to do is store a bunch of names, for example, and then print them out later, make it a string array. Because there's no reason for you to get in and access parts of each name. But if you're going to be manipulating these strings in any way, you need to change parts of it, then make it a character array. Now, how do you know which is which? And this is just a subtlety of the notation. If it's in single quotes, it's a character array. If it's in double quotes, it's a string. And that's, I think, kind of a bad design. That's too subtle a difference, but that's the way it was done, just for historical reasons. All right, so just to illustrate that, if I do name string equals Ebenezer Scrooge in double quotes, that's a string. If I do name character array equals Ebenezer Scrooge in single quotes, that's a character array. All right. And if you look in the workspace at the dimensions, so name string, oops, here is name string. All right, it says, it's kind of small, but I don't know how to blow this up right now. So it just says 1 by 1 string. So it's just a 1 element array. Okay, the whole name is just 1 array element. But if you look at name char array, you see that says a 1 by 16. Okay, so each letter is a separate element of the array. And so it's important to understand this because let's say you have a list of names you want to put into an array. If you try to make it a character array, this is all just going to get appended together in one long character array. And you've lost track of the division between names. It's now just one long string of letters. But if you make it a string array, it keeps the names separate. Okay, so you can extract the names individually later. All right, so this is a 1 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is a 1 by 10 character array. This is a 1 by 3 string array. Another example of that, I put in these 3 names, first as a character array, second as a string array. So the first case, I get a 1 long character array. Oops, where'd it go? With no boundary between the names. In the second case, I get a 1 by 3 string array where the names are kept separate. All right, and then when I try to index into them, remember if it's a character array and I put the index 1, that just gives me the first character, so it just gives me the J. If it's a string array and I put a 1, that gives me the whole first name. All right, so why would you ever use string arrays? It seems like, I'm sorry, why would you ever use character arrays? It seems like kind of a headache. It seems much simpler to use string arrays. Well, if you want to be able to access parts of the array, parts of the name or whatever, then you store it as a character array because that allows you to pick out individual letters or a range of letters. So if I go back to this last character array that I made, and if I say extract the first 14 characters, that'll pick out the first name. But I just happen to know, just by counting, how many letters there are in that first name. And notice the blanks count as well. That's 5. The blank is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All right, so you have to count everything. The blank counts and the period counts. And so that's 14 characters altogether. Or if I wanted to just extract the last name, I can go from 10 to the end. And so just any indexing technique you can use with numerical arrays, you can use with character arrays as well. Or you can change individual letters or a range of letters. All right, so let's say I decide I don't want my middle name to be Edward anymore. I want it to be Kevin. So I say change the 7th character, 5, the blank is 6, the E is 7. Change that to a K. And then I say, well, let me do it in 2 steps. All right, so now I've got James K. Tony. And then I decide I want to change my last name. I'm tired of people confusing my last name for my first name. So I'm going to change my last name to Smith. So I can say set characters 10 through the end to Smith. All right, so this is another thing you have to do in one of the exercises. All right. So you can set a range of values just like you can with a numerical array. Now, one last point, and this also is something that's going to come in handy, not in today's exercise. I think it's in the next one, or maybe even 2 exercises from now. But ultimately, in a computer, everything is just numbers. So it's not really storing letters. It stores what's called an ASCII code for each letter, each character. And you can see that in MATLAB, if you just multiply the character by a 1, it actually shows you the ASCII value. Okay, so MATLAB lets you do a funny thing. It lets you actually do arithmetic on characters. And what it will do is just replace the character by its ASCII code. All right, so if you wanted to see what are the ASCII codes in this name, multiply it by 1 and you can see it. So the ASCII for a capital J is 74. A lowercase a is 97, and so forth. And you can even do arithmetic to change it. So let's say I want to change my middle name again from Kevin to Larry. I can say add 1 to that 7th letter, and that'll change it to the next letter. Change it from a K to an L. All right, so now I'm James L. Smith. And one handy thing to know, the difference between the uppercase and lowercase letters in ASCII is 32. So if you subtract 32 from a lowercase letter, that capitalizes it. All right, so let's say I wanted to capitalize the whole last name. I say take those last few, from 11 to the end, and subtract 32 from them. All right, now Smith is capitalized. All right, so that's why you use character arrays. It's so you can get in and access individual characters. But what if you have a string array? You have a string, and then you realize I need to manipulate it in some way. Well, you can just convert it to a character, just using char, the char function. All right, so I can take this string, Nikola Tesla, turn it into a character array, and now I've got it that way, and now I can access the individual letters.